Hi, my name is Scott Garibay, and this is an open letter to Hasbro in spring of 2023. And I wanted to talk today to you about Hasbro, the global corporation, about role-playing experience versus a role-playing game in context to the intellectual property you own, which is Dungeons and Dragons. And so let me begin. So one, I'm hoping this reaches you, Hasbro, and I just want to open this by saying thank you, Hasbro. I am incredibly fortunate, and I have been incredibly fortunate to be a beneficiary of Dungeons and Dragons. I was a beneficiary under Dungeons and Dragons for I started playing in 1982. And from 1982 to 1997, I was incredibly well served by Gary Gygax and Lorraine Williams. And then for a brief moment, Peter Atkinson was in control of Dungeons and Dragons, and and I'm incredibly thankful for the days when Wizards of the Coast controlled Dungeons and Dragons. But since 1999, you, Hasbro, have been in control of Dungeons and Dragons, and I am thankful for every single day that you have been in control of Dungeons and Dragons. And I will tell you right now, without any hesitation, I can say you are a far better guardian than TSR ever was, or that Wizards of the Coast ever was. And I really think you're the best, Hasbro. Thank you. I think you're the best guardian of Dungeons and Dragons that has ever existed, and the brand has exploded in popularity and success under your incredibly careful and wise stewardship. And I'm saying this now because everybody and her brother wants to tell you that you're not doing a good job, right? And I'm not unaware that everybody who's telling you this and pointing and laughing and calling names at the stewardship you've done for Dungeons and Dragons is doing it on jack all of no results, right? So like everyone who's saying that you guys have been bad stewards of Dungeons and Dragons has done 100 times worse being stewards of other junk games that are frankly nothing compared to Dungeons and Dragons. So everybody, so I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you. I know you guys are under incredible strain right now, and everybody's pointing and laughing, and everybody who's pointing and laughing is pointing and laughing with no results, right? Like you guys have outpaced so Hasbro, thank you, because you've made Dungeons and Dragons not so that it doesn't have a single competitor in the market. There's not a single game in the world that even remotely competes with Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons competes with the entire industry at the same time, and with outrageously few exceptions, measured in months, right? You have outpaced the entire market for all of the 22 years that for every day of the 22 years that you have owned Dungeons and Dragons and Guardian Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm extremely, extremely thankful. So I just wanted to say that. I'm coming to you because I have some advice, and I really want you to take this advice seriously. And the reason why is I have never seen a time in my entire life. I've been playing since I was 12 years old in 1982, and I have never seen a time when Dungeons & Dragons has been under more threat than right now. And that includes the Satanic Panic. The Satanic Panic was nothing compared to what we are seeing right now. And the reason I believe that what you're dealing with right now, the 2023 Manic Panic, is 100 times worse than the Satanic Panic. And the reason why is the Satanic Panic was completely understandable, right? It was Christians coming and saying, we think D&D is linked to Satan, we think D&D is linked to the occult, and we want D&D be gone. And they shouted it from the streets. They literally said the same words in 2023 that is shouted in the streets today, D&D be gone, right? But it was understandable because they thought it was linked to the devil, they thought it was linked to the occult, right? Now, the threat's coming from within the house, and you are under threat by a new, far more dangerous group. And these are people who have literally made money from Dungeons and Dragons, now saying we want D&D be gone. And people who ran Dungeons and Dragons, people who bought, owned, read, run, and watched Dungeons and Dragons are now telling others that they're not allowed to buy, own, read, run, or watch Dungeons and Dragons. And get this, in 1983, when people who bought, owned, read, run, and watch Dungeons & Dragons were told that they could no longer buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons, that was in a time of absolute fantastic wealth in America. The biggest problem we had was yuppies were growing. There were too many yuppies, right? Young urban professionals. And wealth was growing too fast in America, right? In a time of peace and in a time of prosperity. Now, in a time of plague and absolute growing poverty, when the world is under incredible strain, right? Now, people are coming again to say that it's not okay, that forbidding people to buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons in a time when people have zero bandwidth for someone threatening Dungeons & Dragons, literally the existence of Dungeons & Dragons, right? In 1983, they said D&D be gone. No one is allowed to buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons. And here we are in 2023 with the world a hair's breadth from World War III, plague jumping across the planet, and poverty running rampant in America with literally people not even able to buy milk and eggs, right? And there's just no bandwidth for this type of just outrageous persecution of Dungeons & Dragons, dungeon masters, and players, right? And it is so weird. So I understand, Hasbro, you're new to this. This is the first time you guys have never seen D&D be gone before. But I'm a Dungeons & Dragons champion. I love Dungeons & Dragons, and I will champion it until they put me in a pine box. And I just want to say I have incredible sympathy for you right now, and I want to encourage you because I know you guys are under incredible strain, in Washington State, and I just wanted to tell you there are still people who love Dungeons & Dragons. But I have some advice for you. Okay, so you guys are under incredible pressure right now, and I really do think you need to make some moves. You need to make some changes, and you can't sit on your laurels because Dungeons & Dragons is under threat. And I know you guys want to keep it safe, and I think this is the best option. So what I would really suggest to you is that you abandon the term game for Dungeons & Dragons and replace that word with experience, right? So I would really say that you drop the idea that you never refer to Dungeons & Dragons again as a game, and right now you say, hey, Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game, right? And I really think you should abandon that terminology and begin saying Dungeons & Dragons is a role-playing experience, right? And even get rid of the word table, right? And the reason why is we may not have the luxury of the table for very long, under the persecution that is happening right now under the 2023 Manic Panic, and a fresh new group of people rising up to tell others that they cannot buy, own, read, run, or watch Dungeons & Dragons. Persecution, clear as day, right? Like just freedom that we had, and now an entire rise-up group of people saying others don't have the right to do this. And it's incredibly challenging, okay? So why should you do this? Well, first of all, I'm going to give you another little thing here. So my name is Scott Garibay. I have an incredibly unique view of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm the only person on the planet who thinks this. I've spent 3 or 4 years trying to convince others of it. I've not convinced a single soul, but I am convinced of it 100%. And I'm going to share it with you now because it's important to me. It is my humble opinion that Gary Gygax did not write a game and did not publish a game. I actually think he designed and published a human improvement engine that would change human narrative forever and would actually establish a new arc for human intellectual evolution, right? I really think that Gary Gygax did something fundamentally different with Dungeons & Dragons, and he realized during his lifetime, after witnessing two nuclear bombs dropped in his youth, witnessing the Korean War, witnessing the Vietnam War, that humanity was on a fast track to its own destruction. And so what he did was he created this human improvement engine, and he disguised it as the game Dungeons and Dragons. I'm the only person on the planet who believes this. Nobody has agreed with my synopsis, my analysis, and that's okay. And I'm not asking you to. What I'm coming to you for is, I know you do agree with me that you see even now that Dungeons and Dragons is more than a game, and you don't need to sign on to what I believe, because I know at minimum, right? Dungeons and Dragons is a life brand, exactly like Harley Davidson, and literally low millions of Americans have dedicated their lives to owning, riding Harley Davidsons, and have made it a huge part of their identity, right? And I know that right, that Dungeons and Dragons is right there. This element of that, it is an element of Americana, and it is absolutely part and parcel to people's identity, right? And I having owned Dungeons and Dragons since 1999 for 23 years, I know there's something special about D&D, and that it really is more than a product. It is at minimum a life brand, and at minimum a cultural icon, and at minimum an element of Americana. So if you guys can just sign on to the idea that Dungeons and Dragons is a life brand, is a cultural icon, is an element of Americana, right? Then I think you can now release Dungeons and Dragons from this anchor of the word game, right? Because it's far more than that, right? And Harley Davidson, they understand, right? A fat boy rolls off the line. That ain't a product, right? That is a life-changing crucial tool, right? That will give someone who fights and strives to earn enough money to buy it, it will change their life, right? And it will open up doors that they didn't have before to allow them to join groups that they weren't able to join before. And it will fundamentally give them new freedoms and new abilities and new social circles. And Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion, is far more important and far more powerful than any motorcycle that was ever built, right? And that you have a product that is far more valuable and far more special and far more unique than Harley Davidson ever was, right? So rip the Band-Aid off. Do not call Dungeons & Dragons a game anymore, right? Don't call it a tabletop role-playing game experience. Don't call it a tabletop role-playing game. Call it a role-playing experience, right? Because one, we are reaching a point where we can leave the table behind. We can play it at a table, or we can play it digitally. You already know that, right? But the thing I want you to really embrace is, it seems like you are competing, right, with the OGL creators, right, and the open role-playing game creatives, and the OSRs who are saying, oh, hey, here's some other games that people can play. And what I want you to understand is the OGLers, the orcs, the OSRs, they can offer people games. But what you can offer people is the real deal. What everybody actually wants, right? A celebration of narrative power, right? A celebration of an abstract IRL modeling engine, right? And this is not achieved with old school essentials or dungeon crawl classics or worlds without number. These are hollow husk copies of the real deal, transformative, actual, amazing experience that you offer. And my life has been fundamentally changed by Dungeons & Dragons. I own libraries. I've read 100 to 200 books I would have never read without becoming a dungeon master. When I became a dungeon master, Dungeons & Dragons and nothing else told me, you are a world maker, a world breaker, a world shaker, right? And once I realized that I could create worlds because Dungeons & Dragons told me and showed me I could create worlds, everything else in life has been simple. And the role-playing experience I got from Dungeons & Dragons has transformed my life. So just rip off that useless word, game. Let the OSC, let the OGL copiers, let the OSR serve up games. Serve up what you have, a true transformative role-playing experience that has no equal on the planet Earth. Get rid of the word game with the emergence of 6th edition. Just tear that useless word off of Dungeons and Dragons, and let's embrace it for what it is. The most transformative intellectual experience, secular, that can be had on this planet Earth. Thank you, Hasbro, for everything you've done to Guardian this game. I am very sorry for those in the D&D community that are castigating you, that are throwing contempt at you, that are throwing judgment at you, and forgetting everything you've done. And I, for one, am not going to forget. And I just wanted to say thank you, Hasbro, for the incredible guardianship you've done for Dungeons and Dragons every step of the way, every choice. Right? I'm more than happy with what you released under OGL 1.1. I don't think you didn't owe anything to those OGL copiers, and I think you made the right choice, and I think you're making the right choice now. Tear off the word game from Dungeons and Dragons. It's no longer needed. It's a vestigial nub. Just like, it's a vestigial nub. Thank you, Hasbro. I am truly thankful.